fraudulent activity was exposed. There's a moment where Billy starts with the Sinai Bible. So Wesley Huff brings this up and says, are you referring to the Codex Sinaitica? Once Billy said, yes, the way in which it came across, I was like, you sound uninformed, bro. That's not a sure, okay? But on a mental level, just like anyone who's an expert is like, all right, I got you now. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the debate unfolded how it unfolded. Billy Carson didn't come across prepared. And I would say this of an expert. When you are an expert on something, I would think that like you don't need much preparation for it, because just like mastery, it becomes a part of you.
Student of the mind, steady studying my enemies. Anytime I rhyme, feel like I smoked a blunt of cannabis. Like PG, pass me the clippers, I'ma handle it. More like CP3, just warrior like glamorous.
What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, I'll be giving you my thoughts on the Billy Carson versus Wesley Huff debate. There's much to say, so let's get into it. Recently, Billy Carson and Wesley Huff engaged within a debate about religion, God. I don't think it was about spirituality at all. So let's first and foremost make that distinction. This was a religious debate. Myself, Gemini Brown, I deal with spirituality, which is ultimately the science or cosmology of the universe. My book, Astrology of the Matrix, gives you a unique insight of my perspective on my experience, how I am experiencing the universe, and everything in it makes sense. I don't make any claims to be anything except an observer and what others would call a mystic. So I just want to make that distinction for myself. These other gentlemen, let's say Wesley Huff, as far as I know, he's a clear-cut academic PhD within theology, linguistics. And the linguistics part about that is key in comparison to Mr. Carson in what he judged to be his expertise. The way my mind works is that if someone tells me they are an expert in something, I then am going to think, okay, they must have these particular skills or traits. So I feel like anyone who is a scholar within ancient texts would also be an expert in linguistics, because you're not dealing with one language. So if the person stating to be an expert didn't speak multiple languages, that already, for me, in the way my mind works, is a red flag. So when it comes to Wesley Huff, from what I observed and what he presented, he is who he says he is, and he checked the boxes that would be needed to be holding or projecting the position that he is. Then there's Mr. Carson, which naturally, he's a fellow Black man in the space of divinity, spirituality, education. So just like many of you, I've come across his stuff. And this is just how I operate. I listen well. It's a very good skill. And if you listen well to Mr. Carson, and I think you actually yourself have that academic backing, you know he's not an academic. And I'm going to be honest, I always got showmanship or salesman's vibes from him. Myself, I can be considered many things in this space, right? I can call myself an astrologer. Every astrologer may not be a great teacher. At my core, I know I'm a great teacher. Now, in the real world, I have some training that help turn that talent or natural gift more into a skill, okay? So for myself and what I seek from or a teacher, I don't get that from Mr. Carson and never did. He's written books, he has information, but for me, he never gave me the vibe that like, this is coming from that place that it needs to come from. I would always say I looked at him as a researcher, which we could also say Mr. Huff is. And I would say in the difference is that one may have had just more academic training, which allows you to present in this particular 3D space in a more logical way. So if we get to the debate, first and foremost, Billy Carson didn't come across prepared. And I would say this of an expert. When you are an expert on something, I would think that like you don't need much preparation for it, because just like mastery, it becomes a part of you. And particularly for me, part of the reason I know I master astrology to some extent, but it's an endless journey, is because I'm seeing it. I don't need to read it to understand what's going on. I'm experiencing it, right? I have a framework, a system that allows me to logically understand what it is I'm experiencing. So I feel like when you get around an expert, you want to get an expert like under the influence a little bit, Pisces. Get them into their 12th house, and you'll really see the spirit come out in them and how they could get into it. In the video, the energy was just bad. I think Billy says he was under the weather or something, but my assessment was that he was nervous. Going back to what I was saying about listening, very on in the debate, fraudulent activity was exposed. There's a moment where Billy starts with the Sinai Bible, or he's asked about the Sinai Bible, something in which, has been a big thing in how he's preaches his message in regard to what religion is, how to understand it, all of that, right? The Sinai Bible says this. So Wesley Huff brings this up and says, are you referring to the Codex Sinaitica? Once Billy said yes, the way in which it came across, I was like, you sound uninformed, bro. That's not a sure, okay? But on a mental level, just like anyone who's an expert is like, all right, I got you now. You don't know what you're talking about. And then the debate unfolded how it unfolded. What we can take away here is many things. I'll just go back to like how I experienced like Billy Carson. I experienced him as a researcher, someone that can analyze something that another person that's kind of already channeled or put a framework around, and then give it their own spin. Not saying they are claiming it, but they can, but you're more so kind of like a disciple of that teaching. So I'm gonna say this, and you guys have been with me a while. You don't hear me talk about the things Billy Carson talks about, because I'm not concerned with that. And I think like the true spirituality is when you're able to actualize the spiritual impulses. This type of conversation or information, I look at is like, oh, this is just stimulation. This is sparking what if, right? So if you're a person in the 90s before all this was available, you come across a book where someone's talking about the emerald tablets or whatever. It's like, oh my God, I know something no one else knows. Now in this day and age, we can discern better. And it's like, there's this kind of hidden information that I could kind of use to improve my own life. And then there's just this in which, I guess at best I can argue others or force this viewpoint upon them. That's just how I see things. And I choose to focus on the uplifting archaic information, right? One that's going to enrich us with awareness. So like, okay, I didn't know this before, but now I know this. Any particular problems I had before, I shouldn't have them anymore. So then there's the next part about Mr. Carson, which we can't outrun here, which is just like, not that your past should be held against you, but he has displayed a tendency to be characterized as what you would call a grifter. I call it a opportunist. And if we knew his chart, it'd probably have something to do with 11th house energy and being ahead of the curve. I think Billy Carson is good at like, no one knows this. Let me take advantage of the inevitable. And as far as I know, he's a Virgo, so he's thinking in this logical type way. Based on his past, he's done things that would say he's down to get rich quick or just scam. If you don't know what a grifter is, it's a scammer. And the evidence is there. Now, I don't want to talk too much about his business, but it's already out there. He has displayed a tendency to not necessarily be who he say he is. And there's evidence out there of him taking advantage of people in his own spiritual community in technical ways. Okay? So look into that. Now, the next part in which I want to address here, I just want to give a reminder that even this thing within itself was more like entertainment. There's nothing of practical value that we could take here to enrich ourselves in regards to the information being presented. The first thing I want to say is that I have no problem with religion. As a mystic, I see the path for religion and why one would take that path and the benefits that can derive from it. But just like with anything, there are going to be limitations to the path. And many of us have a tendency that when we take the non-religious path to kind of judge or cast judgment upon those on the religious path, probably because we ourselves experienced that judgment from them. Mr. Carson was doing this a lot. And each time I saw him doing it, I was like, that's not good. And that actually shows you is just another version of them. Okay? When you start saying, I'm a god this, I'm a god that, in comparison to like downplay another, you're just doing what they're doing in a different fashion. It's the same vibration. So I saw that coming. I want you guys to refrain from the stimulation part. Ooh, I didn't know this. This sounds good, but not really understand what any of that means, because they talked about things, all these different gospels, and this is a forgery, none of which can move the needle now. But let's say you're on the path of like hoodoo. Well, the Bible's going to have a different type of power for you. But I want to say this like about like the debate in the religion. If you're on the like spiritual path, if you're using divination systems, if you're connected with like nature and all of that, all those other religious texts may not necessarily have anything of value for you. When we look at like other spiritualists, right? You want to ask yourself, okay, like what's at the root of their message, right? And really listening to what they're actually saying. So the people in which, I've bigged up before, like the 19 Keys of the World, Earn Your Leisure, which, they're connected. I like the fact that they linked with the information, the practicality, the real world manifestation of it. And the things that they can actually offer you to enrich your experience via the information, right? And I understand that everybody is not meant to teach, but if you are channeling the information, or if it is coming from the right place, you're going to be teaching and leading by example at minimum, right? Hence the sun. We are all the sun. So this is something as a reminder to double down on your purpose and cross your T's, dot your I's. Y'all know I have a video in which I kind of talked about this before. When I asked you, I was like, many people love astrology, but couldn't really define astrology. You don't want that to be you, right? So overall, there more I can say, but I'm gonna park it here. I want to hear your thoughts. What did you take away from it? What is your experience with others like Mr. Carson? Let's get into it. Drop a comment. All right. Check out my book, Astrology of the Matrix. If you need a reading, check out my website, GeminiBrown.com. Till next time, peace.